Hi guys, it's Jordan from P&P Campers. Just going to be doing your handover video on your AutoTrail Cheyenne. It is a 696 SE model and it's based here on the Fiat Ducato 2.8 turbo diesel. So first things first, on the bottom of the bonnet we've got this, which is your paint code, so that's 249 Fiat. So that's this white colour that you see throughout the entire vehicle. The engine battery is this one just here on the left hand side, so really easy to get to that if you ever need to jump start or anything like that. Brake fluid attached to the servo just behind it there, power steering fluid and engine oil. Your engine oil dipstick is this yellow topped one just down here. Then got your washer fluids down here. Engine coolant up here. Air filter sits inside this box just here. You've got a big bank of fuses and relays underneath this box just here, and your washer fluid is under this one here. So that's about it for under the bonnet really. It's all just fairly straightforward, but there we go. So to get to the diesel filling point, push on the left hand side of this little flap and this will release this little diesel cover. You will need the ignition key to get that open, and that is diesel. Inside the passenger door there's very rarely much to show you, purely just because everything's really on the offside, on the driver's side, but a few remotes and bits and pieces in there, just in case you ever need to have a look through and try and find any other remotes. They're in there. So there is a little fuse bank in here as well, fuses and bits and pieces in there, as well as the same on the other side. On the other side, on the driver's side, you can also get to your OBD reader there as well. Right, so we've got absolutely loads of extras on this particular vehicle, so I'm just going to start off by running through those. I'll just carry on throughout the rest of the van as I go. So you've got your external gas point in here. This is a bullfinch fitting, so as long as you've got your gas turned on in the locker, you'll have gas coming through to this external point. Just in there you can see the back end of that as well. Inside this cupboard we've basically got your leisure battery on the left hand side, and then a load of storage, wet storage down here, and obviously you can see the rest of the storage there as well. This covers over like so you can fill that right up with whatever you want. You've got your full-size recessed awning up the top. Up there you can see it's the original one because it's still got the exact name and model of the vehicle. So you have got an electronic step that comes out. So if I just show you that, you've got this little switch just here. Step comes in and out nice and easily, like so. And that is from that switch just there. The switch to the right of that is your entry light above the door. So if I just show you that going off, that's that one there. So if you need to sort of see where you're going when you get in, if it's dark outside, that's your button just there. You have got an awning light up here as well. Just thought I'd have that on so I can show you it working as well. Right, so you've got these Malenko locks over a few of the doors. So this one's obviously on the habitation door. You have got one on the main garage door there as well. Underneath that, we've got your Thetford toilet cassette locker. Now you've got a fresh water flush on this system, so you haven't got any separate flush fluid to worry about. So you haven't got to fill up any pink fluid reservoirs. As you can see here, this blue pipe on the left is basically just going to be coming directly from your pump. So anytime that you've got water in your fresh tank and your pump is turned on, you'll be able to use the flush for the toilet. So to take the actual cassette out, lift up on the little yellow tab and then pull the cassette all the way out. That will then come all the way. To empty it, turn this round and take off this yellow cap. When you're actually emptying it out, hold down this little yellow button at the back, and then once it's all emptied out, you'll notice that this cap here is actually a measuring cup as well, and that's basically the cap full size of the blue fluid that needs to go back inside here. So fill this cap up, pour it back in, put the cap back on, swoosh it about, push it all the way home, and that's it. All right, so we've then got your freshwater filling point. So this is where you fill up your fresh water, and the freshwater drain off point is this black one just down here underneath that. So it's handy that they're right above each other, so you can't really forget. This is the freshwater draining point. This is the freshwater filling point. The spare wheel sits inside this rear locker. I'm not going to open it up because there's nothing to show you on this side. I have got the other side open just so I can show you the boiler drain and things like that. But the spare wheel sits inside there. At the back, we've got the full-size tow bar. A lot of people like to have these tow bars on to save damaging the back of the actual vehicle. If ever there was going to be a little bump somewhere, it's going to hit the tow bar, and you're going to be thankful for that, because, you know, much rather have a little bit of a mark on a tow bar than cracks on your sort of fiberglass body. So that is handy. Not much else to show on the back. So this is the locker on the other side that I was saying about. So you can see there the size of the garage, absolutely brilliant, and you can see that spare wheel there as well. I've only got to show you one thing really in here, which is inside this little cupboard. It might be a bit dark, very dark actually. Basically inside this little cupboard here, just tucked in here, is a little yellow tab. Sorry I can't really show you it, but it's a bit too dark to see it. But basically what the little yellow tab does is it drains the boiler out of all of its water. So if you wanted to winterize the vehicle, all you have to do is go inside there and lift the tab upright so it's facing up, and then you'll notice that all the water from inside the boiler will drain out straight onto the floor, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Just open that up and leave it open, and that'll just drain it all out. So next door to this cupboard, we've got your external shower point. That is just there. There's another bullfinch fitting, and the actual fitting point for that is inside that wet locker next door to the leisure battery on the other side there. Next door to that, we've got this, which is your Truma boiler vent. So because the boiler sits just here, actually right behind the heater, which I'll show you when we get inside, obviously, you need to make sure that this little cover is off before you start trying to use this boiler, because it won't light up unless you do. If you ever wanted to double check that it was definitely working, you can put your hand either side like so, and you'll feel hot air coming out through there. Down underneath here, we've got your wastewater draining point. So if you ever wanted to drain out your wastewater from the tank, you just basically undo that little valve there at the bottom, and it will drain it all out from there. Right, we've then got the two vents just here, one above the other. These are both to do with the fridge. So if you've got the fridge lit up on gas, you'll see two things. First off, you'll see this little condensation patch, and depending on the weather obviously, but you'll normally find there's a little bit of condensation building up just there when you've got the fridge lit up, and that's purely because there's heat coming from this little vent just here and going up, that's all. Now you very rarely have to take these vents off. It's only really for us when we're sort of servicing them and things like that, but that is access to the back of the fridge. Last bits on the outside, we've got the hookup point just here. So if you do need to have the hookup plugged in, or you have got access to it, that's where that goes in just there. And then we've got your really nice sized gas locker. So at the moment, we've just got this one full 6 kilo propane bottle in here. So to turn that on, we go anti-clockwise around to the left. To turn it off, we go all the way down clockwise to the right. You've got till, what does that say, 2028 to replace this hose. Yeah, there you go. Right, to open up the gas locker, you've got a little handle just inside the driver's door here, and that basically, when I'm pulling on that, pulls this little mechanism down and opens up those. So you'll notice that when I put it down, that's now completely locked. There's no handle, or there's no lock on the actual front of the cupboard door. So you need to pull this little handle here, which releases it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to jump in the cab and show you what we've got in here. So this pre-2007 style of cab is usually pretty straightforward. You've got, again, quite a lot of nice extras in here as well. So you've got the 5-speed manual gearbox. Reverse is lift up on the back just here, over and up to the top left. You've got the electric adjusting mirrors, so you can select which mirror you want to move and then use this as a little joystick, basically. Really as easy as that. You've got the full front windscreen blind here, so you can pull this up, basically, and it will reach up and hook over these little parts here on the sun visor. All right. You've also got in here, just in case, and it is always handy to have this sort of stuff, previous owner has obviously written down all of the dimensions from this as well. So all of your standard sort of heater controls are just here in the middle. Hazard warning lights are just there in the middle there as well. As I said, you have got a few more fuses and relays in this one on the right. This is a little flap to give you access to the OBD reader. I'll just go the other side, sorry. You've then got bonnet release handle just here on the left, and then steering column adjustments there to the right of that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just going to come into the back end of the vehicle, and what I'll do is I'll start off the video on the inside just by going through the control panel up here, because that's kind of like the brain of the vehicle. It'll tell, you know, certain places where it needs power and blah blah blah. So once you come in the habitation door, we've got this Sargent power, well, it's like a control panel, links up directly over here to this, which is your Sargent power supply unit. All right, so I'll run you through this whole area in just a minute. It looks a lot more scary than it is. So these are some of my favorite control panels because they're so simple to use. Once you've got this powered switch turned on, the screen will then come on. All you can do then, flick through here. It's not very good on the camera. You can basically just flick through here and it will tell you things like, let's go through, battery current, wastewater level, freshwater level, leisure battery, vehicle battery voltage, leisure battery voltage, and then back to the home screen. So basically the most important things, the bits that you're going to be wanting to go through and see on that is going to be your leisure battery voltage and engine battery voltage. And the reason for that is that, say if you're away camping, you've got all the lights on in the vehicle, you've got your fan going on the heater and all that sort of stuff. It's all being powered from the leisure battery down there. So inevitably, after a certain amount of time, that leisure battery is going to go down and down and down. And so you do have to keep your eye on that leisure battery voltage up there. When it starts getting a little bit low and it starts going down to sort of 11 or 10 volts, it's just, all you have to do really is either start the engine up for a little while and allow that battery to charge up from the split charger, or if you have got access to a hookup cable, plug the hookup in for a little while and that'll keep you charged up all the way up to about 14 volts. So on the left hand side of the control panel, as I say, you've got your main power switch just there, water pump, auxiliary power, and you've also got this one other switch here, which basically, I'm going to leave that off for now. All it does is it switches which battery is being powered and used. So at the moment, without that light being on, the leisure battery is the battery that's being used, and it's also the battery that's got the power going to it. So if we were hooked up on the mains right now, the charger up there in that unit would go down and charge the leisure battery. If I switch this button on, like that, what it does is it then stops the power being drawn from the leisure battery and starts drawing power from the vehicle battery. Now, the only reason you would ever do that is if you were in the middle of a field, or whatever the situation is, if your engine battery is flat, you can, if you've got the hookup plugged in, you can switch that button on and the hookup will actually then start charging the engine battery instead of the leisure. All right, so essentially the only reason you would ever use this switch here, I'll turn it off for now, the only reason you'd ever use that is if you wanted the hookup that you have plugged in to charge the engine battery instead. But for the most part, you want to leave that one off so that your leisure battery is being charged up by the hookup and your leisure battery is the one powering your lights and all your 12 volt things. Right, so we've then got auxiliary power, which, to be honest, is normally just sort of added extras, certain bits and pieces with the vehicle. They're all different, if I'm honest. So what I generally do is I'll get into the vehicle, I'll turn the power on, I'll turn the auxiliary power on, and I'll switch the pump on as and when I need it. So that's a bit of like a fail-safe way of using the vehicle. So if, for example, your pump was to run on without you hearing it, if you haven't switched that switch off up there, it will just carry on and carry on and carry on until it burns itself out. Now, normally, if the pump is going to run on, normally you'll be able to hear it and do something about it. But if, for whatever reason, it's running on and you can't hear it, it's always a good idea to have that switch turned off when you're not using it. For the time being, I am going to use it, so I'll leave it on so I can show you what I'm doing. Right, so this cupboard up here, as I say, it looks a lot more scary than it actually is. So what we've essentially got is this unit just here, which is your power supply unit, all right? So it's your PSU. Now, you can probably work out what that means, but essentially all the power, so the engine battery, the leisure battery, the hookup, all comes to here, and then it gets diverted off to wherever it needs to go around the vehicle. So you've got fuses down here, these are your 12-volt fuses, and there is a little word or a couple of words above each one telling you what they do. You've got your mains trip switches in here as well. There's also a word underneath telling you what they do. The actual charger itself, now normally the chargers sit inside these units. I would imagine that at some point the charger has given up and they've had to fit a different one above it, so that's why you've got this one up here. Doesn't mean it's anything wrong with it, it just means that they've had to replace it at some point. Over on the right, we've got your TV aerial booster. Now you can turn that on and off from this little switch just here. If you're not going to use it, I'd leave it turned off. The TV systems, if I'm completely honest with you, I didn't do the hab check on this particular one, but we don't very often actually go through the TV systems because they're all aftermarket. So I'm sure that it all works. We haven't tried it, we haven't used it, to be fair, but have a go of all that. It's all in there. There'll be paperwork for it as well, I'm sure, but there you go. Right, so that is the power supply area. Now the first thing I'm going to show you appliances wise is going to be the boiler, and the reason I'm going to do that is because it's kind of like the most expensive part of the van and the part that you want to look after as best you can, really. So what I'll do is I'll just run you through that first. So before you start trying to use the boiler, it's really important that you do two things. So first of all, make sure that that cover is off the outside, which I showed you a minute ago. And secondly, and more importantly really, is to make sure that the boiler actually has water inside of it. So to do that, there isn't a gauge or there isn't a level meter that you can look at or anything. So all you need to do, turn your pump switch on, assuming that you've got water in the fresh tank, come over to the sink and just draw the water through cold and then hot. So we've got good pressure coming through the cold side, no air coughing out at us, that's all good. Turn it around to the hot, exactly the same, no air, good pressure. And now I'm going to turn this off. So as long as that pump now turns itself off, doesn't matter how long it takes really, it will do it. So what that does, right, so me doing that just there has just proven to me that the boiler is full of water. And the reason for that is, if the boiler didn't have any water in it or it wasn't completely full, we wouldn't have got any water coming through the hot side of that tap just then. So until the boiler is absolutely full to the brim, the water will not come through there. So it's just like a fail-safe way of doing it. So if you for example, if I lit the boiler up now, after emptying the boiler out, so it's completely empty, it would just overheat. It's like turning on a kettle when it's empty. It's no good. So you need to make sure that you check, just by doing that, making sure that the water's coming through nice and clearly, hot and cold, and then you can forget about that and use the boiler exactly as you want. That's all you have to do. All right, so now that I've done that, as I said a minute ago, I've just always got this thing where I turn the pump switch off when I'm finished with it. it's probably a little bit overboard really, but it's just something I like to do. So to actually use the boiler itself, we've got this switch on the right hand side up here which says Ultra Store. Now Ultra Store is the name of the boiler. You've got in this cupboard here as well, I'll run you through this separately in a minute, but you notice there you've got a little switch on the left hand side which also says Ultra Store. Okay, so Ultra Store is the boiler. If I want to light it up on gas, all you have to do is turn the dial here once to the right and then set your temperature. And that is literally all you have to do. It goes from 30 all the way through to 70. And once you've switched it on, you get a green light and you've set your temperature. After about half an hour or so, you'll have hot water coming through to the taps. And it genuinely is as easy as that. So if you want to use it on gas, that's all you have to do. If you're hooked up on the mains and you don't want to use the boiler on gas, you can come into the wardrobe here and turn this Ultra Store switch on. Now, the only thing I'll point out about that is that you really have to be sure that you've turned that off again. Whenever you're finished with it, whenever you're not using the hot water on the mains, please be sure to turn that switch off. The amount of times that I've had people come into us, you know, or hook up all the time and don't realise that switch is on is unbelievable. So, you know, if you've got the boiler empty of water and you hook the van up and you don't remember that you've got that switched on, you know, it's going to be heating up nothing again and you're going to run into the same problem. So just make sure that Ultra Store switch is turned off when you're not using it. But that's how you use the boiler on the mains. So that's how you use the boiler on the gas, and then we've got the mains in the wardrobe. Fridge is going to be the next thing I'm going to run through. So this is a Dometic three-way fridge. You've got freezer compartment at the top, and then the rest of it is just normal fridge stuff in there. So to actually use it, we've got three different options. So we've got gas, which is what we're on at the moment. We've got 230 volt, which is when you're hooked up on the mains. And we've got 12 volt, which is for when you're driving. So the idea behind these fridges, it might sound straightforward as I've just explained it, and it is really, but the only thing that you've got to remember is that you have to pre-cool these fridges before you start driving off. So the 12 volt function, even though I said that it works for when you're driving, it does. It uses the engine's power to keep the fridge cold via 12 volts, but it's not powerful enough to get the fridge cold by itself. So all it really does is keep the fridge cold as you drive. So for example, if you're going to go away on holiday tomorrow morning, I would recommend coming out to the vehicle the night before, putting all of your stuff in it, you know, inside the fridge, and then either light it up on gas and leave it on gas overnight, or if you have got the ability to hook it up overnight, leave it on the mains there for the morning. And then by the time you come to it the next morning, it'll be completely cold, and you can then just switch it over to 12 volt as you drive. And that's it. Back to the middle, turns it off. To the right of the fridge, we've got another important locker. So down here is your sort of rack of gas isolators. So if you ever needed to isolate the gas from any specific appliances, so the only reason you would ever do that is if, for example, you thought a specific thing. So say you had the fridge on gas and you thought you could smell gas or something. You'd come in here, find the fridge isolator for the gas, which is the one on the left hand side there, and then isolate it by turning it 90 degrees. So that's the only reason you do that. You don't have to do that every time you get out of the van. Turning the gas bottle off in the locker is the best way to isolate the gas, because that'll turn it off from outside. All right, so this is just purely for if you think you've got a specific appliance that's problematic. So if I just quickly run you through what one is what. So you've got on the right hand side, we've got the space heater, boiler, external gas point, oven, and then fridge. All right, so if you have any specific problems with any of those, you can isolate them from there. Obviously, give us a shout if you do have any problems like that, because we can sort it out. But if you're in, if you're in real trouble and you think you need to do something quickly, you know where to look. So you've then got this, which is your complete cooker system. All right, this is all one piece. It's a spin flow caprice. It's a Mark III. They've done loads of different models of these. This particular one, because it's based on the British vehicle, like the AutoTrails and Auto Sleepers and things, you have also got the electric ring up the top. So this will only work when you're hooked up on the mains, and this is this dial here on the left. The rest of them are just like any household gas cooker. So you've got an ignition switch and the actual dial there for each individual burner. The rest of them, grill is down here, and that is this one just here, and the oven is underneath that, and that's this one on the right. All still using the igniter switch from there. The only other thing I'm going to mention is that I would always recommend, if you've had the cooker on for a little while, please do not, and this applies to the grill as well, because the grill's vent is this bit here in the middle. Please don't put the lid straight down after turning any of them off. I have seen it before where they've shattered, and it's not the end of the world because we can get these glasses, but it's a real mess. So I promise you that's the last thing you want to happen. So allow this whole system to cool off for at least sort of 20 minutes, half an hour or so, and then put the lid down, if possible, that is. If you have to get going straight away, it's, is what it is. But if you have got the chance to leave it to cool off a little bit, I would definitely recommend that. All right, so we've then got the heater down here. All right, so this is your space heater. Now this, again, because you've got a British vehicle, you have got the option of gas or electric on this one. So if I just get down here so I can show you properly. So these Truba Ultra Heats, so that's what this is called, is an Ultra Heat. This is like the top spec one. All right, so you've got the 240 volt option, you've got the fan, and you've got the electronic ignition. So top spec on the heater. So all you have to do to use this, if you're trying to light it up on the gas, that is, you come to the left hand side just here. So you notice at the moment it's facing 0, and we've got no flame inside our little peephole down here. So to turn the flame on, all we have to do, turn this little switch around to sort of 2 or 3. You can now see the little igniter going crazy down there. All I'm going to do now is push this button down. So I'm just pushing it in, and basically what that's done is it's lit the pilot flame up. So all I'm going to do now is lift up on that and turn it all the way around to about 8 or 9. So you can see there now, main flame's kicked in as well. And that's it. As long as that flame stays on inside there, and you can keep your eye on that little flame inside that peephole, that's it. You're good to go. The heating's working. From there, you've got the little switch on the right hand side, which is your fan, and you've got these little beige vents around the vehicle, which is where the fan's going to blow the air to. So push this little switch to the left, and then you can choose from 1 to 5, and it just basically starts blowing the air faster or slower. Now, I always recommend, if you are going to use these heaters, I always recommend you use those fans if you have them. The heaters themselves get so hot. If you don't use that fan, the fronts of these get so unbelievably hot that normally you'll start to notice that bits of like the wooden effect stuff will start to peel off and all that sort of stuff. So as often as you can, use that fan. And actually, when you turn this gas back off again, so I'll do that now, all the way back around to 0, and the flame has gone out. I always try to leave the fans running for sort of 5-6 minutes or so after turning it off, to sort of more evenly distribute the heat that's still left in it. So always recommend doing that as well. Now, as I say, you've got the option of using this on mains as well. So if you are hooked up on the mains and you want to use the heater on the mains, all you have to do, come into the wardrobe here again. First step is to turn on your ultra heat switch. Now that doesn't start the heating working straight away, so that just basically that's an isolator switch for something else. So turn your ultra heat switch on in there, and then come back to the top just here, and you'll see that this other switch here on the top above the door says ultra heat as well. So if you aren't hooked up on the mains, this won't work at all. But if you do want to use it and you are hooked up on the mains, ultra heat switch on inside the wardrobe, and then you've got the option of either 500 watts, 1000 watts, or 2000 watts. And that is basically just equivalent to a certain amount of amps. So this is a bit of a boring bit now, so I'm just going to explain something to you. So basically, if you say, for example, you go to a campsite, you'll have a specific amount of amps that you're sort of allowed to use when you're hooked up. So say you're plugged into a 13 amp pole at a campsite. So because these British built vehicles have a lot of options for the mains as well as gas, you do have to be kind of cautious on how many amps you're drawing at one time. So for example, if you're using the cooker, so let's say we're over here, we're using the cooker on the mains here, and we've got it on 6. I think off the top of my head, they tend to draw something like 5 amps. All right, so let's say you've got 5 amps going there. You've then got the option of using the fridge on 240 volt as well. That's going to be drawing about 1 amp. So you've now got 6 amps. You've then got the option of using the boiler on the mains, on the ultra store switch. That's going to be another, I think, about 3 amps. So you're now on 9 amps. And then obviously you've got the option, as I was just saying, to use the ultra heat. So the ultra heat is the one that's going to cause you the most, well, it's not issues, but you know, the one that you have to keep your eye on the most, really. So if you're using 500 watts, that equates to about 2.2 amps. 1000 is about 4.5 amps, and 2000 is about 8 amps. So for example, let's just say we have this up on 2000 watts, we're drawing 8 amps, but we've already got these things on, which we were using 9 amps for. So immediately, as soon as you try to draw that 2000 watts one up there, try and draw that extra 8 amps, you're going to trip the switch outside on the pole because you've overloaded the power. All right, so it's not so much, it's not like a house where you can kind of really load it up and you can draw a lot more power through household consumer units and things. You do have to be a little bit more cautious on what you're using. So what I would say, something I always say when you've got these ultra heat electric options, is I would just never try and use a 2000, because there's just no way. First off, there's no way you actually need that. It's sort of a ridiculous amount of power to use just for a heater. Just try 500 or 1000. Normally that's more than enough anyway. But that, generally speaking, will mean that you don't ever get to the point where you need to worry about the amount of amps. I suppose it's only really if you're going to be using it on the 2000, that's when you're going to have to start thinking about what else you've got on. But if you're not going to use it on 2000, I wouldn't worry too much about it anyway. But I just thought I'd explain you through how that works or what that means. So again, once we're finished with that, I'm going to come back in here and switch the ultra heat switch back off again. So essentially, just try and make sure that those 2 switches are turned off when you're not using them. Heater, I'm going to turn the fan off for that now. Let's put this back down. Okay, so I've shown you how to use the control panel, the heating, the hot water, fridge and the cooker. A couple of lights over here have been sorted. Apparently they're hanging down. They've been done. So the bathroom is the last bit, really. So the bathrooms I very rarely spend much time in showing you around because they're pretty self-explanatory, really. The bit that I only generally go through is the toilet, because not everyone's used one of these Thetford toilets before. So it's really simple, but I will run you through it anyway. So you've got this little blue switch on the left-hand side. If you've got the pump switch turned on and you press this blue switch here, the water will pump around. I've got it switched off at the moment, that's why it's not coming round. But that is how you use the flush for the toilet. And when you want to drain whatever's in the bowl here into the cassette, pull this handle towards you. That opens up the flap, and then everything that's inside there goes down into the cassette. Make sure that you push the flap back over again when you finish with it, because if you don't, it will lock the cassette from outside and you won't be able to pull it back out. Hot and cold tap just here for the sink in the bathroom, and exactly the same one here for the shower as well. Only thing I will point out, there's nothing wrong with this particular one. It's actually all in very, very good condition. But please be careful with the shower tray. I quite often see people putting, all sorts in these showers just to try and, use up as much space as possible. But these shower trays are delicate, and one of the most common jobs that I do personally is repairing shower trays. So just try your best to look after these shower trays, because it's not a little job to take them out first off, but also to repair them is a pretty big job. So just try your best to look after them. Save you a lot of hassle in the future. But yeah, I think that is about it. It's been a fairly long video because there's so many extras and bits and pieces on this particular van. But yeah, so this is a 696 SE Cheyenne, and that's about the end of the video. So if you think I've missed anything out, or you want anything else showing, just let us know. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much.